So is Mass boring? Sometimes I went to Mass and boring. Boredom is the enemy. If something is boring, it's a failure. And I'm talking about Mass particularly here. This is because there's no meaning. If we know that when we go to Mass, we go to the foot of the cross, we go to Christ crucified, we step outside of time, we enter into the heavens, that takes away the boredom, but we need to have the meaning. I want to show you this painting here. This is a painting by Raphael, and it's in the Vatican in Rome. And if you can see it, you'll notice a divide right away. And this is the clouds, this is heaven. And you have Jesus right in the center. You have Blessed Virgin Mary, and you have St. John saying, "Him, idiots." Right? This is the one I told you about. One is coming. Behold the Lamb of God, right? So it's pointing. Okay? And then you have the Father above him, and the Holy Spirit coming. The Holy Spirit's in the form of a dove. You have the four Gospels. All angels are holding up the books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And up in heaven you have the prophets and the saints and the apostles, and there's some angels up here. So here's the scene of heaven. And then on earth, this painting is called the Disputation. So everyone's sitting around, you have different saints and bishops and guys and homies who are saying, I don't know, that's it. And so Raphael took people from different periods in time and put them all together. So what are they talking about? Well, in the center is an altar. Altar is the place that Mass is celebrated. It's a place of Eucharist, communion. And on the altar is what's called a monstrance. Monstrance means it's showing us. What's showing us? Inside the monstrance is what this whole painting is about. It is the Eucharist. In the monstrance we have the Eucharist. And that's the source of debate here. And in the Eucharist, what they're saying is Jesus. So we have this divide, but we also have this divide. Look, the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, the Eucharist. And so what this painting is telling us that when we have the Eucharist, we have all the life of heaven. When we enter into the Eucharist, we step outside of time. We go to the foot of the cross. You can't tell, but Jesus has the wounds in his hands and in his side. So this is showing us the reality of the offering of Jesus to the Father. So in this teeny tiny little, what is it? That's the Eucharist. We have Jesus in the whole life of heaven. This is why we genuflect. This is why we prepare ourselves for Mass. This is the real presence of Jesus. So if we grasp this meaning, we see that there's infinite mystery. Does that give us something to get excited about? I hope so. At the beginning of Mass, the priest says, "Brothers, let us call to mind our sins and prepare ourselves to celebrate these sacred mysteries." There's some mysteries for us, right? This is what we're entering into. This is wondrous. This is amazing. It's a process. The Christian life is a process. Understanding, but also growth. St. Paul, one place, is talking to the Corinthians, and he says, I planted the seed. In other words, I brought you the good news of the faith. And then he says, Apollos, another guy, watered that seed, but God gave the growth. So he's saying, at different times, different ways, we receive the faith from different people. We hear it, but it's always God working within us, drawing us closer to him, helping us grow in love. And so the Mass is the way that God facilitates that love to us. And so that's why everything that happens in the Mass, the very church architecture, the icons, the candles, even the doors and the steps, the gestures we make with the bowing, the kneeling, with the holy water in the front, the altar, all these things are packed with meaning. And at the bottom there, I give recommended reading. The last one is a link. And each of those things I mentioned, plus more, all the smells and bells, as it were, there's an awesome reflection by a guy named Romano Guardini. And they're only like a paragraph or maybe a page for each one. I highly recommend you read that. So, if we're able to enter into the Mass fully and participate fully the way that this documents, Sacro Sanctum Concilium was talking about, then that will open up a whole world to us. And so there's an openness, which means being willing. Doesn't mean that you're automatically an expert, but being open. And saying, what am I saying? What am I doing? So this is a learning process, but it's an ongoing process. So the church has also said that if we help a child enter fully into the Mass, we will give them an adult catechism for the rest of their lives. If you think about it, this is what has happened to the church over the last 2,000 years. The liturgy has kept the Catholic faith intact when everything else has failed. When we've had shady bishops, when we've had plagues, when we've had various heresies being taught in the church, when we've had no printing press, nobody had catechism or Bible in hand. The faith is still held intact in the liturgy, in the Mass. So I told you I'd come back to this, and this is the last thing I'll say. The word Mass is interesting, because the last thing the priest says is, in Latin, it's ita missa est. Go, it is finished. So we named our worship after the part where we get to leave. The Mass. Why is this? Because the Mass is the source and the summit of our faith. We receive the grace of Christ, and He sends us forth to go live it. He gives us the grace in the Mass to live it. So go. We are sent. And so the Mass, the Sunday, is the beginning of the week. But it's also the high point. It's the end of the week. We're working our way up to the next Sunday. So we're always between Sundays. We're coming from that foundation, and we're heading towards that high point. And so we can see that we need to prepare for the next Sunday. We can prepare as the next Sunday is remote, it's farther off. And so maybe the way that we plan out our week, proximate as it's getting closer, and immediate. As we're preparing for Mass, one of the ways we do this, we have an hour fast. We fast, we don't eat any food other than water for an hour before we receive the Eucharist. And this is to prepare us to receive worthily. We also, another thing that's highly encouraged is you get to Mass, you'll say a prayer for me. Prepare. Say, Lord, make me worthy. I want to join myself to you, like Chris said, about throwing myself into the bucket of money. Okay, not like that. A prayer, preparing to be joined to what Jesus is doing. And after Mass, why not kneel for another minute and thank God for the offering of thanks? So the Mass is the very foundation, high point, is the source and summit of everything that we believe. Let's take a break.